In today's video, I want to talk to you about why I think you should tell your life stories. And there's a good reason for that. If you don't tell them, who will? You have a history, you know lots of things, you've had lots of experiences that you can pass on and help other people. That's what I'm going to talk about in today's video. My name's James. If you're here for the first time, welcome along. In the last 2 years, I would say that I've shared a lot of my stories on this channel. And the reason I want to talk about that today is because last week I had someone who told me that they felt I told too many of my life stories. And there's a reason for why I do, and why I think you should as well, and why I think you ought to do a YouTube channel too. That's a lot to chuck in, isn't it? But the thing is this. I started this channel for my sons. The channel was a legacy, if you like, so that when I'm gone, the lessons that I've learned over the years, I would be able to pass on to my sons. Now, the reason I wanted to do this was because when I was a teenager, my dad's uncle, my great uncle, I would have been about 18 or 19 and he was in his late 70s, possibly early 80s. And I'd go and see him and we'd have a cup of tea and he would start to tell me these stories of his life when he was growing up. And not only did it seem like a different world, even then, but the things that he taught me in these stories, I've kept with me over the years. And many of them have held me in good stead for as time goes on. And I always wished that I'd recorded them on a cassette or whatever it was at the time, so that I could have played them back, because now his great-grandchildren are alive and I'm sure they would have loved to hear those stories as well. And so when I started this channel 2 years ago, in a couple of weeks, that was the intention, that I was going to tell my stories, pass on my life experiences and hopefully pass on some advice to my boys and give them a bit of encouragement as they move on in the world. Now, I talk about my boys, they're both men. One's 38, the other one's 34, coming 35. And so it's not about young children. What I know was when I was their age, I'd already lost a business. I'd already gone through a load of struggles. And the reason I tell these stories is not because I'm something special. It's not because I've earned a load of money in life. I've built an empire and I have this story to tell you. But exactly the opposite. The reason I tell these stories is because, like you, I've been through the mill. There's no doubt we all do. And my hope is that in some of the telling of the stories that I've got and some of the experiences that I share, my hope has always been that it would help them so they didn't make the mistakes I did. And that was the beginnings of this channel. Since then, the channel's grown. More people have decided to follow the channel, and for that I am extremely grateful. And I've loved to tell these stories, not because I think they're great, but because a lot of them are stories of struggle, of things that I went through that I didn't enjoy at the time. But what I've learned over life is that you don't really fail. You don't really come unstuck. What you do is you learn lessons that will make you a stronger, better person as you move on in life. And so I started to tell these stories of things that had happened to me, of things that I'd gone through and struggled with. And I also tried to tell you how I came out the other side of it. It didn't always happen. And sometimes you just chalk it up to knowledge, I suppose, and you remind yourself not to do it again. But I've been so stupid sometimes I've done the things twice just to make sure. I'm just an ordinary Joe. I'm nobody special. And yet, over and over again, in the telling of my stories on this channel, I've had people comment and then do something I never expected when I started this. They open up and tell me their story. And I feel really humbled when that happens. And when you get people say to you, thank you because you've helped. Yes, it boosts your ego a little bit. But for me, it makes what I do worthwhile on this channel. And I've got stories of pain, of mistakes, of business errors, of all sorts of things that I've shared that people have said to me, aren't you embarrassed to share them? And I don't think you should be embarrassed about your stories. I think that the lessons you can learn from your stories by the telling of them and retelling to different people is that you can help others who are in that same boat as you. I recently talked about the end of my marriage and what happened. And I've already had someone come back and say, I've had exactly the same kind of thing happen to me. I thought I was alone. We're not special people. What we have are special stories, and stories that you can pass on through the telling of it on YouTube or to people that you know. If you've got loved ones, if you've got generations below you of your family that you love and you care about, telling your stories on here is like a legacy. You can pass it down to them. You can share it with them, and the proof is in the pudding. If they're listening to you and they're taking it on board, these things that you tell them, you can save those people a great deal of pain and misery if you think about it. I know the fact I lost a business, I lost my home, lost pretty much everything once. When I left my marriage, I left a home behind. I came away with a van, some disco equipment and some bits and pieces. So pretty much twice in my life I've been skint, broke, lost all my money and had to start again. The funny thing is the second time wasn't as bad as the first time because I knew what I had to do to get out of the hole. And that's what your stories can do to other people. The stories of your failures, don't get me wrong, tell the stories of your successes as well. Because my mum used to say to me about success, it was like boats in the harbour. And as the tide comes in, which is your story of success, it lifts all the boats. And so that what you have to tell and the stories that you have to tell could be important for one person. If you consider that the things that you go through, the mistakes that you make, the failures that happen, the things that you learn from, the things that make you a stronger, a better person, if by sharing them, you help one person, isn't it worth it? This may be a changing of my thinking, as there was one time I was very private and wouldn't tell any of my stories. I didn't think it was to do with anybody. And yet, time and time again, in the telling of a story that was painful to me at the time, yes, it sometimes helps people who know me to understand me a little better. But it also gives someone that you don't know even can watch your story and go, wow, if they could do it, perhaps it's not as bad as I thought and I can do it too. And that's why I think YouTube is a perfect place for a lot of people. Tell your stories. Regale the mistakes that you've made in life. Tell people how you've overcome the trials and tribulations that you've had. You see, I believe that history isn't for just the rich, the powerful, the politicians, so that in years to come people can hear their stories. I think the stories of value, of merit, of joy, of pain, just the whole gamut of life, if you like, are shared by people like me and like you. Be proud of your life. Be happy to share it, warts and all. It's not because you want to make yourself look good. It's because that somewhere along the road, you can make the difference in somebody else's life. Wouldn't that be good? Just imagine something that you've overcome saves somebody from the pain that they may be in because they realise that it isn't just them. You have that ability. And that's why I believe you should tell your story. Tell it on YouTube. Tell it to your children. Tell it to your grandchildren. I know they may roll their eyes and go, oh, he's off again or she's off again. I know that. I used to do that to my mum and dad. And yet, as I've got older in life, I remember their stories. I remember their lessons that they taught me. And I'm so grateful that I can. But their lessons are lost to anyone but me. And they're lessons that I've passed down to my boys as they were growing up. Our lives aren't humdrum. Our lives aren't plain and dull. Our lives are full of stories that can help others. And wouldn't it be good if one of your stories helped somebody else? Wouldn't it be good and gratifying to feel that you've helped someone overcome something? What's the big deal about it? I'm sat in front of you just telling you what I think. You can do that too, and you can make a difference in somebody's life. So go for it. Tell your stories. Don't be shy. Don't worry that someone's going to tell you that you talk too much and you tell too many stories. They're not the people that you're aiming to help. If you've got any thoughts on this, then please feel free to message me down below. I'm going to be telling more stories, more personal stories in my membership group. Stories about people that I've met along the way and whose stories have helped me in my role. That's going to be over on the membership group as we move on. But if you click there, there's another video that I think is going to help to move you on and perhaps give you a little bit of hope if you're struggling in the moment. I'll see you.